Hello, everybody, and this is level 2 of the 2017 second semester, and it's September 8th. And this topic is all about vortex-based math and applying the Flying Rainbow Lasagna to the concept of vortex-based math. So I did not invent vortex math. That was invented, or let's say, has been researched and popularized by a teacher named Marco Rodin, and I'll write this down for you. And one of his students who is Randy Powell. So if you go on YouTube, you can find lots and lots of good videos that are by these people. And I'll also include them in the supplemental homework video and tell you all about what this is. So picture's worth 1,000 words. Let me get some of my, let me get some of my, I know I make funny squinty faces. Hold on a second. Okay, I got all sorts of wonderful good things. So first of all, where do I even start here? First, let me just select some of these that I want to show you. Okay, so these are some pictures of the actual physical structures that are created that are called Rodin coils. So Marco Rodin is a mathematician, and he invented or discovered or has created this new way of visualizing math. And it's open source. This is why I like to say the Flying Rainbow Lasagne is like open source code for your DNA. The whole idea of open source is that you have this wonderful idea, and instead of holding it as a proprietary secret where you have to pay $1 million to get access to it, you freely share it with other people and say, hey, take this and investigate it and see what it's all about, see what happens with it. So these apparatuses here that you see are the end result of people taking the original ideas from Rodin and actually applying it in reality. Let me just grab a little pencil here so that I can draw. So, and I'm highlighting right here, that's copper wire. And you can see this part that I'm highlighting here, that's like a plastic donut shape. The wire is wound around this plastic donut shape in a very special winding pattern. Wait, let me draw that a little bit better. It actually kind of goes in a figure eight, like this, and then down here like this, and then like this, and like this. And this basically is a torus pattern. And fun and interesting things happen when these wires are coiled in this way. The apparatus itself begins to exhibit some interesting new characteristics. So first I'm going to get into the theoretical basic thought structure of what the vortex math is. Then I'll get into the winding pattern, and then I'll get into how that relates to Flying Rainbow Lasagna, because this is the advanced level. You guys are all familiar with this shape that I use all the time, this basic torus donut shape. And so now we're going to apply this to what I would say is the integumental step that human math and science on Earth right now is taking in moving towards an understanding of this type of math that I draw and paint back here. Because up until this point, we've been understanding math as a series of Arabic numerals, like the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, in a linear equation like 1 + 1 = 2. We can have a different way of understanding math that is understanding it in terms of shapes. Oh, so wait, first I'll just grab this picture right here. So again, this is not my work. This is work that I have learned from other people that was popularized by Marco Rodin and Randy Powell. And this is known as this ABHA, A-B-H-A, or ABHA torus. And so let me choose a different color that won't conflict. Here we go. So this right here, what I am highlighting in dark blue, is very similar to my little shorthand that I'm always drawing. What am I always drawing here? This is the torus in cross section, right? So that is exactly what we've got over here. And the idea is that this shape represents all of the different possible math functions that a person can experience: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And that the functions are represented as vectors, and vector just means a line of force. So if we say this is a line, it's a line of force that is moving from this number 1 that I just scratched over into this number 2. And what is happening when we move that line is a doubling effect, because 1 doubled plus 1 = 2. So we go over to here, and that's 2. And then if we take that same vector and we go in this direction over here between 2 and 4, we've doubled 2 to 4. And then if I go from 4 over here to 8 over here, I have doubled 4 to 8. And now fun and interesting things start to happen, because the next thing is going from this line over to this line. And you say, Aurora, 8 to 7, that doesn't work, because if we double 8, let's write it, 8 plus 8 equals 16. You are correct. This number over here is not 16. But if we take these digits, 1 and 6, and add them together, 1 plus 6 equals 7. And that's exactly what we have over here. So this ability to condense numbers like that is taking the digital root. That's what it is called. We're just adding together the end result, all the digits of that particular number, and coming up with an end result. And that allows us to continue going around this torus shape. Here, I'll highlight it in red. Wait, go to a different color. When over here, when energy flows around this shape, it flows like this, right? I've done this many, many times in this class, and this is part of one of these basic building blocks of the cosmos. So when energy flows around this shape, look, we're going like this, like this, like this, like this, like this, like this, and back up to here. And every time we do it, we keep on doubling. But the end result, after we double, we reduce the digital root and end up with here. So 7, this was 8 plus 8 equals 16. That's 16, that reduces to 7. And then 16 plus 16 equals 32. So that's what this is down here. But you're like, wait, Aurora, that's a 5. That's not a 32 down there. That's a 5. But 3 plus 2 equals 5. And then if we move that back up here, 32 and 32 is 64. And 6 plus 4 equals 10, and 1 plus 0 equals 1, which is why this is a 1. So what I'm trying to show you with all this, and I'm telling you, if you didn't follow along with all of those calculations, don't worry. This is like, I'm just going through this very quickly. The idea of integument, that we're going from this viewpoint of numbers and math as being this type of equation, 1 plus 0 equals 1, into the understanding that math can be a dynamic shape. And as I'm holding up the Flying Rainbow Lasagne, math can be a dynamic shape, and that it can have properties and characteristics. So let me clear everything off. How can I clear everything off? Clear. So I went through this torus, what I'm highlighting in pink over here, but there's this little triangle shape over here, and those numbers have their own unique relationship. So the numbers bouncing back and forth between 6 and 3 also do a doubling. So 3 plus 3 equals 6, and 6 plus 6 equals 12. So this would be a 12 over here, and 1 plus 2 equals 3. And so we go back to that 3. And then 12 plus 12 equals 24. And so this would be a 24 over here, and that's 2 plus 4 equals 6. So we have this special relationship of 6 and 3 bouncing back and forth like this. And then 9 is its own crazy thing. 9, all of these multiples of 9 all always add up to 9. So, 9 times 9 equals 81, and 8 plus 1 equals 9. And that's true of all of the multiples of 9. So there's special qualities for these 3 numbers that are a little bit different than the special qualities of these guys over here. And all of this in order to say that Marco Rodin promotes the idea that this blue torus shape that I just drew is like electricity, and that this little red triangle is kind of like the magnetism that arises as the end result of electrons flowing in a wire. So I'll go back to my face. This is an outgrowth of the level 1 lesson 2 class that is all about how when electrons flow in a wire or flow in a linear fashion, it creates a magnetic field around it at 90-degree angles. And I'll draw that for you now. I mean, even though this is repeat and everything, get the whiteboard up. So if this is an electron flowing in this direction, all around that electron will be created a magnetic field. And that magnetic field is at 90-degree angles. So imagine this is kind of like, a tube, a cylinder that follows that wonderful electron as it is flowing down the wire. Now you're going to understand how all of this relates to that particular coiling effect of the copper wires. So at first, this was all just a math concept, just a amorphous, non-physical concept that this guy was thinking about. And then he shared it as open source, and people built the coils and actually started to find that the coils have unusual properties. And so I was talking about this in the introduction. Dr. Gates is a high-level physicist, and he's created these visualizations of forces and math in physics that are kind of like very complex drawings that are kind of like what I draw back here. And the idea is, he spoke one time at publicly about math being a form of ESP, that we cannot actually use our physical eyes to look into certain areas of existence. Like, you can build a microscope and you can look at things that are super, super tiny, and we can tell that they exist at this point. But there are some things that are so tiny, we cannot even build a microscope powerful enough to really be able to perceive them. So this physicist was saying he felt that math was like ESP, that it was a way of being able to perceive things that are very, very tiny, or things that are at the center of a black hole, or things that are at the center of a star, or someplace where we can't put a physical eyeball to be able to see what is going on. So that is the idea, that math can be used as a theoretical apparatus to perceive reality, and that's what this vortex-based math is going on. So lots of people poo-poo vortex math, and this is like, you don't have to swallow the everything without skepticism, that's fine, but I'm going to tell you more about why and how this is significant. So now let me bring up more pictures. Oh, I did the wrong thing. Let me bring up more pictures, and I make my squinty faces, but I've got everything perfectly organized, so I know exactly where the pictures are. Okay, so this, and this. So what you're looking at now is the inside of a torus. I'm going to get this thing, and I can highlight it here. So here's, you know, if I'm doing my cross section shorthand, here's one, here's the other, and here's the top, and here's the bottom. So we have this very large, usually, oh, darn it, go back to that. Oh, so annoying when the wrong thing gets pressed. So sorry, guys. Here, this one, this one, this one, and this one, and this one. Okay, so I usually draw the circles as meeting perfectly here in the middle, but if we are, there we go, if we are doing anything that is an actual physical creation of the torus, there you have to have room for all of these wires to cross in the middle. They all kind of overlap like this. We can't have all of them overlapping here. There's not enough room for the physical wires. So the physical wires get to be separated slightly. And I hope that you can also see, I'm drawing, these are these little squares. Each square is like a cell. And these cells all contain numbers, and each cell, just like Sudoku, contains each of the 10 digits from 1 through 9. And they don't have to be set up, you know, in a perfect setup like this. They can be in any arrangement as long as you don't repeat any numbers. So for example, we could not make an arrangement where we have an 8 over here and an 8 over here. That's not allowed. But we can make one where we have an 8 there, and we have a 9 there, and a 1 here, and a 2 here, and a 4 here. So each one of these squares is like Sudoku, and you cannot have repeating numbers. And then I think you can also see that there are these longer strips, like kind of like a film strip. And that film strip goes all the way around in a circle, creating these, you know, creating the various shapes of the torus. And those numbers also cannot repeat. So now let's see if I can switch to, here, clear this all out, switch to the next one. Good, you're starting to be able to see this is that same mapping. It is a mapping of the skin of the torus. Here's again the inside view, the skin of the torus. So here's what that map looks like when it is unwrapped from the skin. These are all the number combinations, and it's not that there's just one, there are many different number combinations that are solutions to this. This is like a solution to a puzzle. That's why it's very much like Sudoku. And so now that's all vortex math stuff. Those are not my ideas, that I'm relating now my ideas to this other person's work. What do I talk about all the time in this class? That this shape is created by this membrane of death. And that really, that numerical mapping of the skin of the torus that I was just showing you represents the same thing that on the anthropomorphic level we experience as the membrane of death. And now I'll draw, here we go. I'm trying to think too many thoughts and make my mouth work at the same time. So here's the torus. And, you know, we've got this like this, and this like this, and another one like this, and another one like this. And We have timelines that go upward. And of course, this is a simplification. You guys know my shorthand at this point, because actually these are spiral timelines that spiral upward like this, because that makes it a lot harder to understand the diagram. I just draw them as if they are simple lollipops that go up and down. And the lollipops, you know, where the sucker would be, where the candy would be on the top of the end of the stick, that is the final denouement, or the bug splatting on the windshield. That's the last moment of your life. So it is like saying that this membrane here is comprised entirely of all of those last moments. And your last moment contains, by implication, all of the moments that came before it. So all of these lollipop sticks down here, those are all the events that led up to the last moment. So if your last moment, if this is you over here and you jumped out of a plane and your parachute didn't open and that's why you died and you splatted on the membrane of death, this lollipop stick here contains all of the events leading up to that, including when your friend bought you the skydiving ticket and when you got into the plane and when you actually jumped out of the plane. So if we took a snapshot of you as you splatted on the ground, that would contain, by implication, all of the events that led you up to there. So all of these blue circles that I'm drawing along here, those are analogous to the numbers that have been worked out for this vortex-based math system. We have different combinations of integers that are over there, and they have to be in certain combinations because we can't repeat them. And that is what is going on with these events of death. That those events of death represent, literally, if this is your DNA, combinations of formats of your DNA in certain dance movements. That is what led you to those particular moments. Now let me find another picture to share with you. Wait, let me put this down. Let me find another picture. Picture's worth 1,000 words. Okay, let me make sure. I know I've got it around here. Here we go. So again, this one, I didn't create this picture, but you can see this, alrighty. And I have to choose a color that you can actually see. So this is DNA that I'm highlighting in pink over here. And it's not a totally accurate depiction of DNA because DNA actually has a major groove and a minor groove. So DNA more accurately is shaped like this. So you can see there's like this fatter, yeah, let me change a different color. This fatter zone over here, and then these, you know, the skinny zone over here, and then this fatter zone. The fatter zone is called the major groove. And that, if we look at this shape that the Vortex Math torus makes, this, and let me move this thing too so I can actually draw there. This aspect of magnetism. So what we've got is an interrelationship here between electricity and magnetism. First, I'll draw electricity. This is the electron flowing in this figure 8 shape around the torus. And then we have, as its byproduct, according to this model, the 3, 6, and 9, which is magnetism. And so the interesting research that happened was, first, Marco Rodin came up with the mathematic the underlying idea, and then researched in physical reality, does the major groove over here, is it actually impacted by magnetism? And the answer is yes, that according to science so far, that this major groove is held open by a magnetic force. And that magnetic force is represented by these particular numbers. So what I'm trying to say here in a very laborious way, I didn't get all of that out too smoothly, is that this vortex-based math torus has an impact or represents behaviorally what is happening on the level of your DNA. All right, so now your advanced class. This is advanced class. I don't have to, go through all of the beginning stuff. I use this sculpture all the time. This sculpture is a torus, and any place where you have a torus, we can add an additional dimension, add an additional degree of freedom, make it jump up and down very, very fast, and in so doing, create a flying rainbow lasagna. And when we do that, what we're doing is rearranging what is happening on the skin of the torus, because that skin becomes connected the outside and the inside and the outside and the inside. that this is a way of rearranging those numbers that are mapped on the outside of the torus that are also the last moments of your life. They are the membrane of death, and they are events that are the end result of your genetic dance. So let me rewind a little bit now and get into the actual physical copper wiring. So first we have the theoretical, that's the word I was looking for, the theoretical math behind all of this. Well, what happens if we think about these numbers and these numbers fit together in this way? And it's interesting to me because we're seeing science going from this particular mindset of being like this to creating these connecting steps of mentality to understanding that this is also math and this is also math back here. But the really interesting stuff begins to happen when I'll go back to those pictures of the actual copper coils. Hold on a minute. So these concepts. All right, so this is a 3D printed like plastic like substrate that you can get these, or you can print them, and then you can wind where I'm putting the red pen, you can wind copper wires around there. And there are special patterns that people have been winding the copper wires in. So you can see this is a close-up of one of these little experiments that someone did and created these particular windings. So these are individual strands of copper, and then where there's this light blue is space in between where the strands are. And that matters because if this red line is energy flowing through a wire, that is an electron, what we get around it are these wonderful 90-degree magnetic fields that are surrounding it. So if you wind or wrap these red lines in exactly the right way, with exactly the right proportions, spacing them apart, what you get is interesting levels of overlapping harmonics. Just in the same way that music can be harmonic, we can create overtones, or that these visual depictions that I'm depicting are harmonics over here. What we're understanding with this torus shape is energetic harmonics. And harmonics means when you add together notes in the right way, that the notes become amplified. So let me clear this away. Whoops, go to the next picture. So I think I showed you this one already, and this one is a composite image where you can see not only the wires that are wrapped around, but how that relates to the numbers. The numbers have an impact on the structure of the wires and how far apart they are placed. Here's another that showed this one already. So there's two complementary directions that wires are wrapped. We've got one that's going in this direction, and then there's one, oops, come on, pen, work, that's going in this direction. And all sorts of interesting things happen when the red magnetic field and the blue magnetic field start to interact together and amplify, and they interact behaviorally is the best way that I could say it. Interesting things start to happen. So I'm trying to say, there's all sorts of different formulae in which to wind the copper wire, like how many windings, how many wires you use. There's different ways of doing complementary, like interlacing, like one set of wires going in one direction, one set of wires going in another direction. And then there are interesting ways of pulsing the energy that actually goes through there. That's kind of like saying we can do interesting things with the stringing of the guitar and tuning of the guitar, and we can also do interesting things with the beat of what beat we play this music at. And here I'll go to one more. So I saved in the supplemental homework playlist and in the events section for this, and I'll share it when I share the archive of this particular experiment that this person did, and it's a casual little video. But what ends up happening is when you place electric energy is flowing through these wires, what happens is the central area here, the tor of the torus, the tor means the donut hole, it exhibits some very interesting magnetic properties. Like this little ball will start to levitate in there, and it might start to spin in figure eights, or it might start to spin in interesting patterns. And I've even seen a video, that's when the electricity is applied to these wires. And then when the electricity is turned off, and theoretically there should be no more magnetic field here, there's still a magnetic field there. And so this physical shape and apparatus starts to exhibit some startling qualities. So that's one of the things. It has high degrees of magnetism in here that sometimes last even when the power supply is turned off. And some of the other qualities are over unity, where let's say if we put in 10 units of energy into the machine, maybe we get out 13 units. And it's like, hey, wait, where did that extra 3 units of energy come from? I don't know. That's magic. Well, it's not magic. There's some unexplained thing that is happening that is allowing energy to act in a new and interesting way. But I know I've been telling you all along, like the most interesting thing to me as a mind explorer is not how can I get cheaper light bulbs? How can I put in 10 units of energy into my LED light bulb and get out 13 units? Like that's not that interesting to me. But what is interesting to me is transcending this level of matter, transcending this experience of time, transcending this level of consciousness. So I promote the idea of what would happen if we took one of those Rodin coils, one of those copper coils, and it's shaped like this. And if we were able to begin to move it up and down very fast in a higher dimensional context and create flying rainbow lasagna with those coils. And the idea is not that we would simply have magnificent physical phenomena like getting more energy out of something or getting like basically the people that are building the coils right now, they're like, well, cool, maybe we could build some kind of levitation device. Maybe we could build some way to save energy. Maybe we could get more sustainability. I mean, these are all valuable ideas, but if you flying rainbow lasagna, if you apply this idea to this shape, we can transcend the need for having to have a light bulb and light up our world in that way. We can have a totally different experience of reality because let's say we're moving this up and down in a higher dimensional space. What we're doing is rearranging the numbers on the skin, the map of the torus. We're rearranging the events that are literally the last moments of your life or the moments of death. We're redefining what death is and being able to transcend it. That's way more interesting to me than being able to levitate a tiny neodymium ball, even though those are valuable steps on the journey of being able to do this experiment. So we're understanding that at the level of your DNA, there's a naturally occurring torus or donut or toroidal structure, and that the vortex math is beginning to explore and describe that and understand that. And I would like everyone to begin applying flying rainbow lasagna to the DNA, to the tori that are at your DNA level, to your overarching physical structure, and to some of these apparatuses as we're building them. It's very much, to me, I would say the analogy is that movie Contact, based on the Carl Sagan book, where originally they're building this machine and it's a collaborative effort and they have to develop a multidimensional mental perspective in order to even read the blueprints to build the machine. And at first they think, oh, I'm building a machine that will fly me through space, like through linear space-time. Like you think like you're building a rocket ship to get somewhere. And when the person actually gets inside of it, the astronaut actually gets inside of it and experiences it, it turns out the way that you get somewhere is having a journey of consciousness, that this is not just about how you can make more electrons flow in a wire, but that this is about how you can transform your experience of time and your experience of perception. So that is what I'm trying to get across with this level 2 teaching. And these concepts are so new, like I'm exploring it and learning it so much. I have not had the opportunity to do a recorded, like a whiteboard lesson that I have as part of the level 2 stuff. So this is super new, super new stuff that is hot off the presses and does not even have a recorded lesson attached to it. So now I'm going into the questions because I'm certain that there are questions about all of this. So, okay. All right. Gaia asks, to get to organic exist, escape the matrix, AKA membranes of death time. So, okay. We need to redefine, I would say, our organic existence, because there's nothing wrong with having a physical organic body that requires fuel and, life force energy and walks around in the physical world. It's actually a wonderful opportunity for us to have these experiences and to be submerged in time like this. Like that's the whole thing. Everybody thinks it's so choreful to be here. Like, oh, I have to brush my hair and brush my teeth and sit on the toilet and do all these things. But it's like, no, we have a wonderful opportunity by being here. We're having this experience. That's the whole idea of the sun is broadcasting all of this to us, or the stars are broadcasting all of this to us. And then we get to broadcast back our experience of what we are doing in real time with these physical, stuff, with the raw materials of stuff and of time. So it's a wonderful opportunity. So I know a lot of people teach things about ascension, and it's the idea of like getting in a rocket ship and flying someplace else, or somehow, moving somewhere else, and then you live on a cloud and everything is better. I really say no. The idea to me of ascension means that we are combining the formerly divergent realms of spirit and matter, or energy and matter, or pure consciousness and matter, that we are having a new experience of time based upon that new combination of formerly divergent realms. And what that really means is, instead of saying, well, I need to find some way to get 13 cents off of my light bill so that I can use my lights more often, I can say, I'm going to use my mind in order to create a new form of matter that is imbued by spirit that transcends the necessity of having to have a lamp. Like, that's a totally different approach than this very materialistic approach of saying, how can we just make cheaper energy? So I'm asking for people to kind of expand your desires. It's kind of like if you're a starving person and someone gives you a magical lamp and you can make, genie in the lamp, and you can make a wish, and you're like, I wish for a sandwich. It's like, you can wish for something way better than a sandwich. Even though I know you need a sandwich because you're starving, you can wish for something much better. And that's what I'm asking for humanity to do. So in terms of exploring vortex math, it's a very valid, good thing to explore, but please expand your imagination, your expectation and desires to go beyond merely a cheaper, less polluting energy source, or a way to levitate. Like, oh, cool, I can fly to the grocery store, but I still have to have the grocery store. I still have to have cows and plants and corn, fields of corn that I can eat, and all of that. Maybe we could have a more fun and interesting experience where we're having a different level of nourishment than instead of just flying a levitation car to the grocery store in order to buy our groceries. So, okay, now I'm getting to all of these questions. Okay, Andrea says, speaking of the membrane, how does that tie into past lives? I've always remembered my past lives and have seen most of my last moments. So, okay, when you look at this shape, and I'm always drawing that vortex, that bottom quadrant, like this part that I'm highlighting with my finger right now. But look, that's one time vortex. That's one lifetime. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and even 5, 6 are implied by this shape. You've got several lives that all tie together in this shape. You're not just swimming around in your own private kiddie pool. What you're doing in this particular organic life, like whatever your name is on your driver's license, your name is, John Smith in this life. You're John Smith, and that's this life down here. But you're also, Sally Henderson. That's this life over here. And you're also a unnamed Neanderthal from thousands of years ago over here. And you're also a being that hasn't been named and doesn't exist yet and will exist in 10,000 years over here. And all of these lifetimes and life spirals are all working together. And I did this for the beginner level class, and I'll use my magical scarf in order to illustrate this again. If this is the fabric of time, space, and consciousness, and this is God's finger is stretching this fabric, stretch, until it's super stretched on out, and it has this pointy part over here. And look, God is also stretching out this part of the fabric of space, time, and consciousness, and then they fit together. The points fit together, and where they all fit together, all of these little points, they all gather together and they all go to the singularity. So my best answer when people think about and ask questions about past lives, first of all, I'll tell you, I will save you a lot of money. Like if you want to go to a reader, a visionary, like a person with a crystal ball, and get them to tell you about your past lives, I will save you a lot of money. We've all been everyone. We have all been everybody. And this is when you really embody this. This is profound, because I've been all of you. And you all have been me. This is like we're understanding all of these lives that all are separate, but they all converge on that same convergence point in infinity. So all of our lives fit together like a cosmic symphony. What you're doing as an individual relates to what I'm doing as an individual. And even this conversation that we're having right now, we had this same conversation around a campfire millions of years ago as, Stone Age people. as you, or whatever, simple cave dwellers. We are having this same conversation in millions of years as highly sophisticated beings that don't even live on this planet anymore. We had this conversation, you know, like, I'm just trying to say, time is fractal. And right now we're having this conversation, we're sharing these ideas, and what we are doing on this level of reality, we're having a similar narrative experience, but in a different time and place, and a similar narrative experience in a different time and place. So this is understanding the entire symphony. It's such a beautiful, complex symphony of consciousness. It's even more complex than I could possibly paint with the hairs of a paintbrush. It's many overlapping fractal layers of reality. So we've all been everyone. And that also means, in terms of personal experience, like I always tell everyone, just take responsibility for what you are doing right now in this time, in this place, in this particular container. I used to have a lovely friend, she's gone to heaven at this point, but she used to tell me about how she was from ancient Sumeria and the bad things that she did back then. Like, she's like, I used to boil people alive in gold and I have to pay the price for it. I would tell her, focus on this life now. Whatever you did in ancient Sumeria, like, let that be, and be this person right now, because I really feel that we need to have energetic firewalls. You know something, you guys, we've all been Hitler. We've all been the worst axe murderers, the worst psychopaths. And let me grab my little pen. When we understand Hitler and psychopaths, let me draw this out as in the whiteboard. Time vortex, this is the advanced level. You guys know all about this. This is your time vortex. And here's your birth, and here's your infinity timeline, and here's the membrane of death over here. All of these peripheral versions of you, those are not really who you are. And so the Hitler that we know as a psychopath, that's Hitler over here in this version, or, you know, whatever, you know, any of these killers, any of these murderers, you know, Vlad the Impaler, any of those are these versions over here that truly, because of this map of consciousness, every single person, including the worst psychopath, has perforce one of these central core timelines. And this timeline is the timeline of eternal characteristics that allow you to continue towards infinity. And so you have to refine away all of these psychopathic tendencies that are distortions, that are not the real you, until you can really travel up this central timeline, being the real person who you really are. So the person who is that real central core timeline of any of these psychopaths would be unrecognizable to us, because we only know their peripheral selves, the distorted versions. Like, Hitler went to art school. What if he had had a different life? What if he had been a painter instead? What if he had, you know, painted beautiful paintings instead of killing a lot of people? He would have been closer to that core central timeline. So we've all been the worst psychopaths, and we've also all been the greatest heroes. The people, if you can think of someone who saved a lot of lives, who a doctor who helped a lot of people, a person who invented something wonderful that saved people, a person who was profoundly good, we've all been that person too. So there's a physicist named Richard Feynman, he's not alive anymore. He had this idea that there's only one photon, that the photon is constantly being emitted from the sun, having experiences in reality, and then rewinding in time and going back, and then coming back and being emitted again in a slightly different trajectory, having different experiences and going back, like embroidery, making embroidery loops and constantly re-embroidering the surface of time. And I think that that is very profound and is very accurate to what we're experiencing in terms of our journey of consciousness, that we are all this infinite particle of pure consciousness, and we're moving through time and having experiences and developing the flavor of whatever you are, you know, the flavor of Charlotte, or the flavor of Sarah, or the flavor of Gaia, that's that particular trajectory when you were emitted that particular experience. However, get emitted from a slightly different angle, and you have a slightly different experience. And that if you really embodied that and understood how connected we are, we would act differently towards one another. Like, first of all, I knew someone, I still know someone, she's still alive. She got a reading on a past life that told her that she's the person that dropped the atomic bomb, you know, that hit the button and dropped the bomb on Hiroshima or Nagasaki. And that affected her profoundly. She felt very guilty in this life for doing that in what she perceived as a past life. And it's like, yes, we've all been horrible murderers, and we've also been wonderful healers. That it's very important to understand that balance, that is part of the journey. We're like a mosaic, just like an insect has a composite eye. Like we have this type of eye, it's different than a bee. The bee has an eye that is made up of all these different facets, and all of those facets add together to create a centralized viewpoint. So each one of us as individuals, we have these individual personality characteristics, and all of those individual characteristics are like one facet of a mosaic that all adds up to this greater unity consciousness. So our journey of being evil people and being wonderful, helpful, healing, loving people, it's part of that mosaic. And so this, like, it brings us to, not that I'm an apologist in any way, like I'm not an apologist for Hitler. You know, if someone is a horrible person, they're a horrible person. It's like making bad music. I make some bad music. Like that's horrible music. I'm not apologizing or saying that that music is good at all. But it's like saying, yeah, you know, something, we've all played really bad music and we've all been wonderful virtuosos. We've all been Mozart. We have literally all been Mozart. We've all been these great virtuosos. And so when people say, oh, I was this person in a past life, what they're saying is, I identify with this particular facet of the mosaic of who I was. And the truth is, if we're really going to be accurate about this, we need to look at the entire mosaic and not just the ones that are the most flattering or convenient. I mean, I identify with Van Gogh. I identify with some of these wonderful artists, but I've also been artists that, you know, no one ever heard about and that never ended up in museums. So we've all been everyone. We've all done all of these things. And what I tell people is take responsibility for who you are right now in this time, in this place, because that is the most practical approach to this. Like what you do with your body is what matters. And this also speaks to the idea that some people feel that they're under some level of mind control, like some kind of MK Ultra or supernatural force that comes inside of them, or they feel like they're being taken over by evil spirit or whatever it is. Like I'm telling each one of us that that's not an acceptable excuse. If this is your body, you have to take responsibility for what is done with your body. It's like your car. If I gave my car keys to a psychopath and who took my car and ran over a bunch of people, I would be responsible because I gave the keys to my car to that person. So if someone says, oh yes, you know, come inside of my body and live and act through me, and it turns out to be, you know, some kind of an evil psychopathic spirit and does something horrible and murderous, you're responsible. You said, here's the car keys, come inside, you know, use my vehicle, do what you want to do. So each one of us needs to take responsibility in this life for what we're doing with this body, knowing and understanding that we are all connected across time to all of these other bodies. But the most practical thing is to take responsibility for who you are right now. Many, many more comments. Let me get to these comments. Okay. All right. All right. Wait. Sorry, I'm scrolling so much. Okay. Got that one. Okay. Oh, that's an interesting comment. This Serdar is in Istanbul time zone, and he says, when I look at the sky, for example, now it's 2:46, and I'm on my roof, and I can see the other universes waiting to merge with this reality for a very long time. That's really interesting. That's a fascinating. Here he says also, the reality I was in, that universe, Earth, had the North Pole and had snow on it and ice, and now there is no ice. So, okay, so yeah, what we are, reality is very plastic, especially right now at this, let me plug in my thing over here, especially right now at this moment when we are just on the verge of combining together the worlds of pure thought and matter. That literally, that is what freedom is, when we have the capacity to think with our mind and directly create the world. So we're in transition. This is what I've been calling it a birth process, and we're becoming virtuosos where we can learn to control our inner world and our manifestation of what is inside. And yeah, and Serdar is sharing the experience of feeling that he died on April 28th, and that many family members did too. And I understand what you're talking about. It's the idea of changing free lanes on the freeway. Like you were on one particular timeline and then switching to a different timeline. And that is an experience of death, even though it might not be a metabolic death of the physical body. Okay, question from Serdar. What would stop someone from imagining or creating a happiness from their pure innocent heart to perform in reality? Nothing. That is the whole idea, that if you can create matter out of your own mind, wouldn't you want to create the best matter? Wouldn't you want to create a world where babies are not born with brain cancer, where babies are all born with perfectly healthy brains, and where there's no toxins and vaccinations and all of those kinds of things? Wouldn't we want to keep everyone in a nice, super healthy format? Joelle has a question. Aurora, my question is, what have you noticed as far as changes since you've been FRLing, and how can we use the FRL to learn to open our third eye or astral travel? Wonderful questions. So for me, my journey of FRL started in 2001 when I came into this body, which would have died if the genes didn't vibrate in this new format. So the first thing that I experienced was not dying. And then there was lots of neurological and brain damage and deficit. The next thing I experienced was, over the course of many months and years, the ability to transcend, get around, jump up and over whatever were the difficulties. So if this is like a road in the brain, like a neurological pathway. If there's some blockage here, it's like, oh, I'm getting. There's a blockage there. I can't go any further, like a scar in the neurology. I learned either to jump up and over it, or to fold time and space so that I could get around the blockage. And by doing that, that is how I regained my math skills, because the brain damage had literally taken away or burned out the ability to understand numbers and to do simple math, and also a lot of articulation, like the capacity to choose the right words and speak fluently and use words to express myself. Both of those areas of the brain were heavily damaged. So I used Flying Rainbow Lasagne in order to retune my instrument so that I could even be here, so that I could be walking and talking and doing artwork and sharing all of these things. And that's like the best template that I could share with other people. If anybody has had an injury or has a neurological problem or whatever deficit, apparent deficit is there, you can use the concept of the Flying Rainbow Lasagne to transcend that limitation, because clearly I do math, I speak, I sing, I play the piano, I do all sorts of good things, and all of that is because I found a way to get up and over the dead ends and the limitations. So let me just make sure that I answered that more fully. So the idea is, by applying Flying Rainbow Lasagne to your DNA, which was toroidal, donut-shaped, and putting it into this higher dimensional context, each one of us can rearrange DNA into its greatest potential. And I won't tell you what your greatest potential is, but I will say that each one of us has that inside, and it's your journey as a musician to learn exactly how well you can play your instrument. Okay, question. Joelle's question. One more thing. What do you think is happening with the sun right now with the X9 flare? Is the sun getting ready for a big change? Yes, absolutely. So you don't have to be afraid, though. We are connected to the sun. The sun is the source of our consciousness. The sun is where we get our neurological activity from. The sun is not like some external, far distant thing, and it's also not a dead thing in space that's just a nuclear furnace that science tries to tell us that. The sun is an alive, conscious being, and we are like its children, or it's like an artist, and we are its art project, and it cares about us, and it's deeply involved in each of our individual lives. It's not like a distant, uncaring thing that's just like, oh, I threw down some seeds and maybe they'll grow, maybe they won't grow. It's like, no, it's like, I really care about the seeds that I planted, and I want to see them grow to maturity. So what I see with the sun and its emanations, with its flares or coronal mass ejections or its activities, is that the sun is creating corrective timelines or corrective integument for the events on Earth, that those are new portal expressions coming through the portal. And that happens when we are able to transmit back. Like when people are in the moment of having a car accident or something like that, and they're just about to, smash into a brick wall, a lot of the time they say something like, time just slowed down, or time stopped. And all of a sudden their mind stopped, and they were able to broadcast and really connect with divinity. It's like it's like if you don't hear anything from someone on the phone until they're in a crisis, and then all of a sudden you get reception. They're like, I'm about to smash into a brick wall, help me. And that's like the sun is like, okay, I'm going to send out a solar flare or a coronal mass ejection, because that is what is going on in terms of Earth society and earthly politics and earthly events, that we are at this moment. It's a moment of great duress, where either people can choose to die, or people can choose to take the highway exit of going towards destruction, or people can choose to take the opportunity to transcend and to rearrange. And all of that energy that's coming from the sun, you can put it into your light body, your solar body. You can use it as a food and a fuel to transform and transcend on a higher level, as opposed to embracing destruction, which would make, if you did that with your attitude, It would put you on timelines where, oh, sure, there's a nuclear war, or, you know, some kind of bomb, or some kind of explosion, or some kind of huge catastrophe that ends life or disrupts society profoundly. You don't have to have that experience if you don't want to. I don't want to have that experience. I want to have the experience where people make art and music and share it with each other, and there's a lot of beautiful rainbows. So I'm putting myself on those timelines, and I invite other people to also do exactly the same thing. So Gina's sharing this right now. She says, I had a vision and an experience decades ago that Yeshua had shown me the other lives, that he had had the terrible things that he had done in other lifetimes, and shared, and that they are all the same. So Gina is agreeing with the idea that even a great teacher like Yeshua, the person that we know as the historical Jesus, that he's that central core timeline of really beautiful, refined characteristics, but that he had different iterations of his own life experience leading up to that, ideal state, leading up to that. Okay, and let's go into here. Gina saying, Aurora is also saying about what we've all done, hurting other sentient beings as well as life's healing. This is it. We're allowed to make mistakes, but so it's like, don't hold on to your mistakes too much. And also those mistakes are the fuel or the compost that allows our garden to grow better. Like, yeah, we have all hurt other people and we have been hurt by other people. I'm not a moral relativist. Like, some things are really wrong and you shouldn't do them. I don't want my words to be taken out of context, but it is understanding the perspective. Like, yeah, you dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, but you also invented, cure that cured a lot of people. So we've all done both of these things, all of these things. And what do you choose to do in this moment right now? That's the real question. Many people are so focused on who they were in a past life, or, even what will happen in the future. But I'm trying to say to everyone, take responsibility for who you are right now. What do you want to do in this moment right now? Flying Rainbow Lasagne means what you think profoundly affects reality and profoundly affects other people and their journeys. So what do you want to think with your mind right now? And that will allow you to do amazing things. And or if you are thinking thoughts of destruction, it can allow you to do some very destructive things. Yeah, and Charlotte is saying that she agrees we need to take care of ourselves first before trying to save others. That's the whole idea of first tuning your own instrument and becoming a virtuoso of your own body and your own life trajectory. And then when you're a really good musician, then you're prepared to jam with others or play with the cosmic symphony. So we are all in that process right now of learning and growing and becoming good musicians. And it's a benevolent cosmos where if you play one wrong note, you're not going to be severely chastised. It's not like, oh, you played a D flat, that's it, you're out of the band. It's not like you get a chance to learn. It's not a capricious, harmful type of setup. Okay, Andrew says, I've been trying to learn from my past lives. It's really cool to be able to reintegrate those lessons and experiences into my current being. Yes, there's valuable, like I said, compost or fodder in those experiences, and it's concurrent. It's actually not something that happened a long time ago. That all the energy that's circulating around this shape, it's actually all circulating around it, quote unquote, at the same time. Out of time, but at the same time. So Serdar is saying that for him, April 28th was a day of rapture because the sun exploded. So let's explore this as an idea. Maybe the sun did explode, and maybe we are all now in an afterlife journey or a self-created astral realm where we're like a dream world where you go after you die. And if this is truthful, because I had to go through a lot of mental inner questing after, the death experience of this body and being here for a long time. I didn't know, am I alive? Am I dead? Am I in heaven? Am I in hell? Am I in afterlife? Where am I? And eventually what I realized was I'm in a mentally created world, and we get to make a choice about whether it's a heavenly or a hellish experience. And the difference usually has to do with whether we share resources and help each other out. If it's a totally self-centered world where like you could be dying in the street and no one will give you a slice of pizza or help you out at all, then that's a hellish realm. But if it's a world where someone says like, oh, hey, you've got a problem, I'll help you out, and then when I need help, you can help me out, then it becomes a heavenly realm. So I'm really saying that this world, we could think of it as an afterlife or as a bardo or, the duat, the ancient Egyptian, realm of the dead, where we're going in our journey. But it's up to us. What do we do on this journey? So my response has always been, I try to turn it into something beautiful, Even if I'm stuck in a hellish realm, I'm like, let me make a painting. We'll make something beautiful. And also, how can I share ideas with others? How can I learn from others? How can I uplift others? How can we help each other on this journey? That's why I say it's a soul migration, but we're not doing it alone. I cannot flap anybody else's wings for them, I'm very happy to travel with others. We can be like baby sea turtles that are all trying to make it to the ocean of consciousness together. You don't have to do the entire journey on your own. And I think that makes it a heavenly experience as opposed to a hellish experience. Oh, wonderful. There's just one more comment from Serdar. He says he can't remember who he was before the world told him his present identity. And those negative timelines merged and depression and anxiety occurred to me. So I think I understand what you're talking about. There's a value to having an ego. Your ego is like your suit of clothes and you wear it temporarily. Like I wear this dress for today, but then at the end of today, I'll take my dress off and then tomorrow I'll wear a different suit of clothes. And that's really what our experience of the ego definition of our identity is. And that's this whole question of past lives. Past lives, that's like the dress that you wore a different day and now you're here wearing this dress. So there's very real connections across time. And then there's also the practicalities, like if I'm wearing this dress today, this is my outfit for today, and I'm not focused on the one that I wore yesterday that is presently in the laundry or what I'm wearing tomorrow. Like this is what we have to do just for the practicalities of moving through time. Yes, and Charlotte is saying she's always choosing love in this fantasy factory. The more that we do that and the more that we align with other people that are choosing love, the more we have a heavenly experience. So that's a big part of it when I say this is like the advanced jazz band. I'm no longer focusing on what I would call the remedial students. Let me just pull down the screen. The people who don't want to play their instruments, they don't want to practice, they hate their piano lessons. Like, oh, piano lessons, I hate playing piano. I am focusing on the other musicians that are joyful, happy to be here, happy to be playing, that want to integrate. Basically, you want to have a body. You want to be on Earth. You want to be alive. You want to help Earth to be alive. You want to help all the other inhabitants of Earth to be alive. Those are the people that I wish to interact with and to collaborate with. So people that are on some kind of a mental destruction expectation timeline where they think either everything has to be destroyed for everything to be renewed, or they believe in their own personal death and resurrection, or any of those things. No offense to anyone, but I'm not really playing that song. I'm playing a different song that says we don't have to all be destroyed, because there are a lot of people that really think like, oh, nuclear war, just wipe the planet clean and then everything will get better. And I really don't agree with that. So if you want to have that experience, you are welcome to have that experience. And that's also part of this, because there are so many different, timelines and levels of reality. There's plenty of room. If you want to have that experience, you can go have that experience somewhere else. But I am choosing a very different type of music that's much more joyful and uplifting. And I'm inviting anyone else who wants to play that song, come, let's jam together. Let's play this song in the band. The band, we can play the song of eternal life and eternal existence. Yes, we can play the song of being cellularly renewed and healed on a profound level, and not to have to, die and decompose and then have different, we can really continue this beautiful life. So I think there aren't any more questions. I think I'm going to finish the recording just so that it's not too long to upload. So thank you so much to everybody who's been watching, tuning in, for your wonderful questions and comments and insights. And thank you for being with me on this journey.